episode, I will be covering all of the NFL Week 6 matchups. So I typically will do an injury report episode on today's, on each week. I will typically do a injury report every single week. However, due to my crammed schedule, I really didn't have time to allow for that. So bear with me. I'm going to get back to my regular schedule here next week. But as always, if you like today's content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. It helps out a ton. So let's go ahead and jump into our first matchup here. We have San Francisco at Atlanta. It is a noon game. San Francisco's favored by 5.5. The over-under is 43 with an implied total of 25-19 in favor of San Francisco. So I have this game actually going in the favor of San Francisco. Obviously, I feel like that they're just the better team overall. I do have San Francisco covering this line of 5.5, and I think it's going to hit the under in this contest. I think 19 is a pretty high point total for Atlanta. I really think that the San Francisco defense is phenomenal, and I haven't seen too much from the San Francisco side of the ball to warrant that they're going to have more points than 25 to make up for the deficit of Atlanta. For our next game, you have New England at Cleveland. So for our next game here, you have New England at Cleveland. Another noon game. Cleveland is favored by 2, and the over-under is 42.5 with an implied total of 21 to New England, 23 to Cleveland. I have Cleveland winning this game, but it's going to be pretty darn close. I think this is going to be a 3-point game to a 7-point game. It's not going to be a blowout win for Cleveland. I really do believe that New England's defense has been not terrible in the absence of their offense so far. I strongly feel that if you have Nick Chubb, you are probably going to win this week. It's going to be a very dominant run game for New England or for Cleveland. And then on the New England side of the ball, Ramondre Stevenson is going to be phenomenal as always, especially in the absence of Damian Harris. I have Cleveland winning this game, Cleveland covering the 2-point, and then I'm going to have this hitting the under. I really don't see New England scoring much in this game. I think that they're probably going to get around 7 to 9 points in this contest, and I just don't see Cleveland putting up 34 points in this game. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and hit the under as well. Let's go ahead and jump to a more exciting game. You have the New York Jets at Green Bay. Another noon game. Green Bay's favored by 7 points. The over-under is 47. 19 points are implied to the Jets, where 26 are implied to Green Bay. I have Green Bay winning this game. They definitely had a bit of a heartbreaker last week against the Giants over in London, and so now they're going to be back in Lambeau. They're going to try and get back in the win column. The Jets are hot off of Zach Wilson returning. They're 2-0 with him coming back. Breece Hall has been lights out. I think that if you have Breece Hall, you're going to continue to see a very, very good performance out of the rookie. However, on the Green Bay side of the ball, coming off of a loss, Aaron Rodgers is phenomenal. He's averaging two and a half touchdowns and over 250 yards passing in those games following a loss. So I think Aaron Rodgers and Romeo Doubs is going to be the name I'm going to call out here. You have Allen Lazard, but Romeo Doubs I think is going to actually score maybe more than once in this contest. He's gotten a lot of the target share. Allen Lazard has been somewhat good in his role. However, Romeo Doubs appears to be the true wide receiver number 1. Also, Tristan Watson, he's going to be out of this contest, so there's really going to be no competition here outside of a Randall Cobb, and Romeo Doubs is clearly better than that. I have Green Bay covering this line at 7. I think this is going to be somewhat of a blowout game. Green Bay is going to win this game, and it's going to hit the over 19 to 26 point implied. I do think that the Jets get over 19 points, but I really do think that the Green Bay Packers get 31, maybe 34. This is going to be a get-right game for a very talented Packer offense and defense. Next up, we have Jacksonville at Indy. Indy is favored by 2. The over-under is 42. 20 points implied to Jacksonville, 22 implied to the Colts. I have this hitting the under. I really don't think that they have two high-powered offenses going up against one another. The Jacksonville Jaguars started off very, very hot in the beginning of the season, but have quickly fallen off. James Robinson has had 2 back-to-back weeks where he just doesn't appear to have the juice. He's really dependent on that big run play, and it hasn't happened these past couple of weeks. These are 2 defenses that are pretty solid. I think Jacksonville actually has a better defense than Indy, which is crazy to say. I have Indy winning this game, Indy covering the line at 2. And then I have this hitting the under. Like I said, I don't think that the teams are talented enough on offense to hit this over. And I think that under is probably a little bit safer in today's contest. Now we have Minnesota at Miami. Minnesota is favored by 3.5. The over under is 45.5. 25 implied to Minnesota and 21 implied to Miami. Okay, so this is going to be a frustrating game for a lot of people. You have Teddy Bridgewater coming off of the concussion protocol, but he's not going to be starting. He's going to be primarily just a backup to Skylar Thompson. I really do think that Minnesota is going to get away with this one pretty quick. I don't think that that means it's going to be a good Dalvin Cook day. I really do think that you can beat this team through the air, talking about Miami, of course. And Miami's wide receivers, although they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they have Skylar Thompson throwing to them. And Minnesota's defense hasn't looked atrocious. I think that they're going to be able to hold their own against this talented, very fast Miami offense. I have Minnesota winning this game. I have Justin Jefferson going absolutely nuclear. If he does not, then Adam Thielen is probably going to get the bulk of that points and target share. So if you have Adam Thielen, go ahead and play him. I think this is probably one of your safest matchups of the year to go ahead and play Adam Thielen. I have Minnesota covering this line of 3.5, and I have this hitting the over, mostly because I think that both teams are more than capable of hitting those like big barn burner type plays. Like I said, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have the like afterburners, and then Justin Jefferson is like one of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL. Now we have Cincinnati at New Orleans. Cincinnati is favored by 1.5. The over-under is 43. Implied point total to 23 to Cincinnati and 21 to New Orleans. So this is going to be one of my upset games. I do think that New Orleans is a better team overall right now than Cincinnati. Cincinnati's offensive line has not really done much compared to the New Orleans Saints defense. And I don't think that Cincinnati's defense is too scary to like shy away from New Orleans offense. New Orleans does not have a great offense. They have Taysom Hill, and then they have Chris Olave, and they're starting to get back to the run game with Alvin Kamara. But for the time being, they're really not crazy good, but they are staying in a lot of these games. They're being very, very annoying to a lot of these teams, and they're at home. So Cincinnati has not looked at themselves so far this year, and I think that their struggles continue in this game. I have New Orleans winning. I have Cincinnati not covering that line of 1.5, and I have this hitting the over. I do think that they have two defenses that are very, very close to being stellar, but they still have a couple of missing pieces that are really not like working on full cylinder. So I do think that the offensive side of Cincinnati and the offensive side of New Orleans is just going to be good enough to, I think this would be closer to like a 24 to 27 game, or even maybe get into the 30s. I really don't see any reason why these teams are going to have a low output on both sides of the football. Now we have Baltimore at the Giants. The Giants are red hot right now. Baltimore's favored, however. 5 points on the road. The over-under is 44. 25 points implied to Baltimore and 22 to the Giants. Unfortunately, I do think that the Giants win ride. I don't even know what you want to call it at this point. I do think that they come to a crashing halt in this game. I think Baltimore is going to go ahead and win this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout win by any means. I actually have Baltimore not covering this line of 5. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. Saquon Barkley has looked phenomenal. However, Baltimore's run defense is actually not terrible. Where they get beat a lot is through the air, and Daniel Jones really doesn't have any wide receivers, but he does have Saquon that he's throwing the ball to as well. I think that this team could be annoyingly in this game, talking about the Giants. And then over on the over-under, I have this hitting the over, mostly because I think that both these teams are highly capable of big plays. And I think that Lamar Jackson is realistically one play away from being a top 3 quarterback every single week. And that's really just the moral of the story here. The Giants defense has made big strides to get better this year, containing Aaron Rodgers last week, and then also having a couple of games this year. And the only game that they lost was to Philadelphia, and they're undefeated. So I don't know. I think that the Giants are actually a good team this year. And as much as that pains me to say, I really do think that they really do come to a crashing halt this week against Baltimore. So now we have Tampa Bay at Pittsburgh. Tampa Bay is favored by 8, over under 43.5, 26 implied to Tampa Bay and 18 to Pittsburgh. I'm just going to go ahead and start with the over-under in this contest. I think that the over-under is way too high for this game, 43.5. I'm going to have this hit the under. Pittsburgh's offense looked horrible last week, getting 3 points against Buffalo. Buffalo, yes, they are a very, very good team, but Pittsburgh showed no signs of life on that offense last week. I think that they have a ton of star power, a ton of talent, but they're just like having a really, really tough schedule. Tampa Bay's run defense is phenomenal. Najee Harris has been struggling. He's not going to get it going in this game. Got Kenny Pickett at quarterback. He's a rookie. He's playing like one. I don't think he's thrown a touchdown yet. If he has, go ahead and correct me in the comments. But he's definitely not one of those guys that you can rely on a week-to-week start. Tom Brady, he's looking to get back into his groove here. It's getting to be middle to late October now. And so Tom Brady's going to turn on the afterburners here going into the second half of the season. Well, it's not really the second half, but you know what I mean. Tom Brady has not been playing his full potential. He's going to have Chris Godwin at full strength again. He's going to have Mike Evans there. I don't think he's going to have Cameron Brate in this contest. He might actually. I think he cleared concussion protocol. Go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong there. And then Leonard Fournette's going to be here, but I don't know. Leonard Fournette's had a couple of really, really big weeks the past couple of times. And I think that Pittsburgh, although they are a pretty bad defense without TJ Watt and a couple of other missing pieces, I do think that they are going to be able to contain Leonard Fournette to, I don't know, let's say 60 yards on the ground and probably 60 yards through the air. Still a very good day for a running back, but it's not going to be that number one on the week type of a performance from Leonard Fournette. Now we have Carolina at the Rams. It's a 3:05 game, so we're starting to get into our late window here. The Rams are 10.5 favorites here, and the over-under is 41, 15 implied total to Carolina, 26 to the Rams. So I have the Rams winning this game. I think that Carolina is... I don't know. It's tough to even call them an NFL football team at this point. They really are struggling quite a bit. They're talking about trading Christian McCaffrey. They don't have Baker Mayfield under center anymore. Not that that was really a good thing to begin with. They got DJ Moore, who's not being utilized. Their defense has actually been somewhat good with Brian Burns on the outside. I don't think that the Carolina Panthers defense is a bad start this week. I actually think it's going to be more of a sneaky start against this Rams offense, who has been giving up a ton of sacks so far this season. Matt Stafford getting sacked 5 times last week is just, there's no excuse for a guy who won the Super Bowl last year. I know that they had the Hall of Fame or future Hall of Fame tackle of Andrew Whitworth retiring last season, but I mean, he couldn't have made that much of a difference for this offensive line. So I think Cooper Kupp's going to be fine, but really outside of those two, I don't really have too much faith. You do have Cam Akers ruled out in this game, so you could see Darrell Henderson have a bit of an increase in the workload. Now, that's not to say that he's going to have a great game, but in games where Darrell Henderson actually is the sole running back, he actually doesn't do too bad. He usually sneaks into the top 12 running backs on the week, and he could be a very sneaky start in DFS where he is only 5,700. Now, you do have the Rams here by 10.5. I don't see that happening. Like I said, I think that this Carolina defense is going to keep it somewhat close. And I think that you're going to have a couple of big plays from P.J. Walker to Christian McCaffrey or DJ Moore. P.J. Walker has been pretty great in his role last week, completing 5 of 6 attempts. He had 60 yards, so not super efficient. However, it's nice to see that they have some type of a thing going on in Carolina. They're going to be without Matt Rule, and I think that this game is going to actually surprise a lot of people. I have the Rams winning this one by probably over 6, but definitely under 10.5. The over-under here is 41. I have this hitting the under. Like I said, I don't think Carolina can keep up. However, I do think their defense is good enough to not let the Rams run away early in this one. All right, so now we have Arizona at Seattle. It's a 3:05 game. Arizona is favored by 3. Over-under is 51.5. Implied total is 27 to Arizona, 24 to Seattle. I have Seattle winning this game, so this is more of an upset, if you will. Arizona is not going to cover that line of 3, obviously, because they're going to lose. And then the over-under here, I have it hitting the over. I think that Seattle is one of those teams that is surprising a lot of people so far this season. Geno Smith is looking like the quarterback in which he was drafted to be when he was drafted by the Jets. I really don't think that Seattle knew what they had in Geno Smith until they actually gave him the football over and over, and then they just kind of let him do his thing so far this season, and it's worked out a lot. Now, the record doesn't really indicate how good of a team this is, but they're putting up a ton of points per game, and Arizona's defense has looked horrible this season. Arizona is always climbing back into the games. They're usually trailing at halftime. They come back into these games, but they either overcome the deficit or they just can't overcome it at all. I think Seattle's one of those teams that pretty much is going to score almost every time that they have the football. I don't know how they're doing it, but Arizona is not going to be able to keep up with this Seattle team, and I actually have Seattle winning by 6 or more in this game. It's going to be a surprise game. It's in Seattle. I think the 12th man on the field is definitely going to have a big factor in this game. I do have this hitting the over because, like I said, you have 2 offenses that are very overpowered and 2 defenses that really don't have a identity so far this season. You have Buffalo at Kansas City. I have Kansas City winning this game. Buffalo is favored by 2. I do not have that line being covered, and the over-under is 53.5, 28 to Buffalo and 26 to Kansas City. I actually have that implied total being flipped for my prediction. I think that Kansas City probably has a 28, Buffalo probably a 24. I don't see this being a barn burner contest that a lot of people are looking forward to. I think that Buffalo's defense has looked pretty great in the wake of the I think that this Buffalo defense has actually looked pretty good, getting Von Miller in the offseason and then being able to contain a lot of these teams so far. Kansas City, their defense has looked really, really good in the absence of a struggling offense. I think that Travis Kelce is actually going to be a pretty bad play this week. I know it's hard to say that given his performance so far this year, but Buffalo has pretty much shut down tight ends this season, including Mark Andrews. So I don't see Travis Kelce having a big game in this game. And I just think that Buffalo is going to struggle to get the ball moving. I think Stephon Diggs could end up getting shut down, and they're going to have to rely a lot on Gabe Davis. And I don't really feel comfortable relying on Gabe Davis. He had like 3 receptions last week for like 171 yards, and that's just an outlier performance. So I don't see that continuing here. Now you have Dallas at Philadelphia. This is going to be Sunday Night Football. Philadelphia is favored by 6, and the over-under is 42.5, implied 18 to Dallas and 24 to Philadelphia. I have Philadelphia winning this game, but I do not have them hitting that spread. I have this being a closer game than a lot of people think. And then the over-under is 42.5. I have this hitting the over. I think Dallas is going to surprise a lot of people this week. You have Philadelphia's defense, who has looked pretty phenomenal so far this season, but so is Dallas's defense. Cooper Rush has looked pretty great in his role so far this season with Dak Prescott returning from injury. And I don't know if Dak's going to have a job when he comes back, because Cooper Rush is undefeated so far this season without Dak Prescott starting. They're going to be up against Philadelphia. It's going to be a very tough game. These two teams absolutely hate each other. I think that Jalen Hurts is going to have a great game. And I think this Philadelphia defense is going to be able to contain at least a little bit of Cooper Rush. Dallas is really going to struggle to get the ball moving on the ground. They're really going to have to rely on their passing game, and that's where Philadelphia is their best. I think Philadelphia and the Dallas offense are going to be a fun game to watch. And for that reason, I think it's probably going to be close to a 24-21 contest. I don't see this getting any higher than this. So I think it's a shaky over, but I will go ahead and give it the over. Now for our Monday Night Football, you have Denver at Los Angeles Chargers. The line here is 5 in favor of the Chargers, and the over-under is 45. 20 implied to Denver and 25 implied to the Chargers. I have the Chargers winning this game. Chargers, I do have covering that 5-point line, and then I have this into the under. I think Denver's pretty bad right now. I don't know what's going on. It sounds like Russell Wilson's been dealing with a partially torn lat, but that doesn't really excuse his decision-making. He's had a pretty well-protected pocket, and he's just not making the right decisions. Now, that could be because he's used to having a not partially torn lat and being able to make those throws. But, I mean, you practice every single day of the week. You should be able to understand what your body's capable of at this point if you truly do have that. So I'm a little concerned with this Denver offense. Denver defense hasn't looked terrible, but the Chargers offense has really stepped up these last couple of weeks. Austin Eckler is quickly becoming a top 5 running back again after a very, very slow start, having 170 plus yards on the ground last week. I do think this Chargers team is back to their high-performing self. The only downside is their defense hasn't looked great. They did make a lot of effort this offseason in acquiring Khalil Mack, but it really hasn't paid a ton of dividends so far. I think that the Chargers are probably another 2 weeks out before they get talked about in the same vein as that Buffalo and Kansas City type team. So we have 4 teams on bye this week: Detroit, Houston, Las Vegas, and Tennessee. Now, for the starts of the week for me, I have Kirk Cousins being absolutely phenomenal. Their team is 9th in quarterback passing, and they are facing a 32 overall opponent in the Miami Dolphins. Tom Brady's also going to be very good. They're 8th against a 27th ranked defense against passing. Tampa Bay's playing Pittsburgh, so that's definitely going to be a good game for him. Josh Allen is probably going to be the outlier here, but he's going to be the most expensive. He is number 1 in passing. He's facing a 25th overall in passing team in Kansas City. So that actually could bear pretty well for Josh Allen. And then Kyler Murray here at 4th in passing, facing off against 24th in Seattle. So I think Kyler Murray could have a good game, but I just don't trust Cliff Kingsbury to have this be a comfortable type of a game for them. At running back, I do have Ramondre Stevenson. They're 11th in rushing, facing off against 31 ranked Cleveland. I think that Ramondre Stevenson could actually have a pretty decent game, given that he's probably going to get the start without Damian Harris. Dalvin Cook, 6th in rushing, 26 against Miami. Since I'm starting Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position, I'm not super confident in the running game, at least right now. It's a game on the road, and I'm not confident that Minnesota is going to be able to go out to an early lead and then maintain. And then Aaron Jones, they're 5th in rushing against 23 ranked the New York Jets. I think that's going to be okay. I think that the better start is going to be Breece Hall in that game. Jonathan Taylor, 2 to 22 in Indy versus Jacksonville. Jonathan Taylor's been ruled out. Nyheim Hines has been ruled out. I think that I don't know what his first name is, but Jackson, the running back, in the absence of those two, he's going to be pretty great. I think that that's actually going to be a good matchup for him. And then Austin Eckler, obviously, they're 3rd in rushing against 17 ranked Denver. And that's going to be a Monday night game. So I think it's going to be a very fun contest going into that, seeing out like how many points you need from it and seeing if he's able to actually get there. At the wide receiver position, I have Mike Evans. They are 5th in passing and playing against the 32nd ranked team in Pittsburgh against the pass. Same reason I have Chris Godwin being another great start this week. Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, same vein. They're phenomenal in the passing game, following up against Kansas City, who's not super great, but they've been able to hold their own. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, both are going to be phenomenal this week. Jamar Chase, I think, is actually going to be pretty good. I don't know if you're going to get a fully healthy T. Higgins. Deebo Samuel's going to be great out of the backfield, as well as through the air. They're playing against Atlanta. I think that's going to be a very one-sided affair. Cooper Kupp's going to be great, as always. Tight end, you have Zach Ertz, George Kittle, and David Njoku, along with Tyler Higbee as my starts of the week. I do think that there is a sneaky start this week in Zach Gentry, as well as Bellinger from the Giants. Gentry is filling in for Freiermuth, who's been ruled out due to concussion, so you could save a lot of money on him. And he's actually not too bad. He played pretty well last week. And then Bellinger, playing for this Giants team, they're going to have to be forced to pass the ball a bit more. And he's been one of their leading target shares so far on that team. I'm going to give a pretty safe start in him. Over on Dallas's side, or the defensive side, I have Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, and San Francisco being number 1 overall at the defensive start position this week. I think that San Francisco is probably going to lead the week on the defense, and for good reason. They're so good, and they're playing against Atlanta, who's been so bad. But as always, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you like today's content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, helps out a ton. But I'll catch you in the next one. See you.